So we've seen our two main characters, Joshua and Rahab, and now we have our three key events of the conquest movement. To go into the land, they first have to enter the land. If you look on page 70, what we're going to see is before they enter, Joshua one more time has his leadership validated, which is important because we've noticed it might be that he is consistently struggling with fear and timidity. But here's what we see. Yahweh says to Joshua, "I will be with you. I will exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that just like I was with Moses," I want you to notice it, underline it, "I will be with you." And we might say that from Joshua's perspective, what else should matter? Yahweh is with me. I have everything I need if Yahweh is with me. And we don't want to miss it. If you remember, the very last words of Jesus in Matthew's gospel, right after the Great Commission, Jesus says in Matthew 28, verse 20, he says, "Hey, listen, behold, hear it. I am with you. I'm with you. What else do you need?" As we go out into the world, even a hostile world that may not understand this message of the Savior Jesus, I'm with you. Don't be afraid. Know that I'm with you. I won't leave you. I won't forsake you. And for Joshua, that's supposed to be enough. Now, what happens is, just like Moses had a gigantic banner that said, "God is with you." That banner was the Exodus. He stood at the Sea of Reeds, and the water parted, and they walked through on dry ground. That same thing is going to happen with Joshua. It's as if God is yelling at everyone, "Joshua's my man. I'm with you. I am giving you this. I am giving them into your hands. This is from me." And they march down to the Jordan River. And if we look out on the map, they come right up here to the Jordan River. And what we see is the priests carry the ark, which is it's a box that essentially is to represent God's presence with them. The law is there inside the box. And it says that the waters, they sat back, they heaped up all the way back from where they're going to cross right here at Gilgal, all the way back to this city called Adam. And they walk through on dry ground. It's this amazing supernatural thing that God is doing. Now, the Jordan River is not that impressive of a river. You can Google image search it. It's not that crazy huge. It's not that wide. Even here at flood stage, it's probably about waist to shoulder deep. But if you have children, which I have 3, even with like my modern refrigerators and vans with sliding doors, it can be really difficult for me to get my kids up and around in the modern world, let alone this former slave community who's been wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, trying to cross waist deep or shoulder deep water with all of your kids and your oxen and your belongings, trying to make your way. This would be a major undertaking. And God says, "I've got it. I'm taking care of it for you. I am with you." And they pass through on dry ground. Now, they pause. This is what chapter 4 is dedicated to. They pause right when they're crossing. Here's the dry ground. And what they say is this. Joshua tells the people, "Take 12 stones from out of the midst of the Jordan, from the very place where the priest's feet stood firmly, and bring them over with you and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight." Take the stones from the Jordan, these river stones, and we're going to set up a marker, a memorial, an altar. And what is the reason for this? Look at verse 6, down at the bottom of page 70. "That this may be a sign among you. Well, hey, when your children ask in time to come, 'What is the point of these stones? Why do we have this? That's weird. What's the stones all about?' You're supposed to tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of Yahweh, that the waters were cut off and Yahweh was faithful to us." It's a marker of God's past faithfulness. And one of our favorite professors said it this way: God's faithfulness, His past action, is both a model and a promise of what He will do in the future. And the Israelites, they set up these markers to remind them, this is where God's been faithful. This is where God's been faithful. Let me just say to you and for me, if you're making disciples in our church, if you have a family, if you're just trying to learn what it looks like to follow Jesus, then having ways to remember consistently the faithfulness of God is really, really important. I have a friend in Memphis, his name's Randy Odom, and Randy has in his living room in his house a big, huge glass vase, and it's like a big round one, and inside that vase are like 2-3 inch diameter, they're like smooth river rock stones, and written on Sharpie on them are dates and then little sentences, or sometimes even just one words, or one word, 2-word phrases, stuff like that. And when you walk into his house, the point is you see that and you go, hey, what's up with that? What's up with that vase? What are those stones all about? And he pulls one out and he'll read the date and say, this is when God was faithful to my wife and I, or to our son with this thing that happened. And he has a big, huge vase full of these things. And his point is he wants to take seriously remembering God's past faithfulness. So if you're a journaler, keep it up. If you're not good at journaling like me, we need to figure out ways to mark God's faithfulness in our life. As the people now they've now entered into the promised land. They've come through the waters and they're now looking out into the promised land. This land, you can imagine that for decade after decade, they've been waiting for this promised land. Here they find themselves in the land. And so the very first thing they need to do is consecrate themselves. And to do that, they take on the public covenant badge, which for them was circumcision. And so that's what's taking place here on page 71. And now they're going to have to figure out how they're going to take the land. They've entered, now they have to conquer it, and that's where we'll pick up in our next notch.